Right. So welcome, Mark, to this webinar. We are very happy to have you with us today, sharing your wonderful approach to the VSM, and in particular in this topic that I think that is very timely, very useful, and so we are very curious to listen to you and to learn from you. So if you want to start, would you like to do the presentation first and yeah, and then do the questions, or do you want to interrupt you?
Actually, it would be better for me indeed to present the ideas. I mean, if there's an urgent question regarding a clarification, something is not clear, yeah, understanding, then of course, please feel free to ask. But I can rest assure you, I have integrated also let's say, an opportunity, a slide, some thoughts that we hopefully then all can discuss, because that is also my ambition today, not only to share an idea, but also to collect ideas here from this group, because, I think this thing that I will present could be extended. And yeah, that's why it would be cool. One block, a little bit of explanation, clarification questions in between, and then let's go into an interactive mode.
So it's an invitation to collaborate then.
Yeah, exactly. The topic.
Okay, let's go for it then.
Okido. Then I say this famous sentence, I share my screen. And just double checking, I hope you can see it also.
Yes.
Good. All right, then, yeah, thanks for attending, everyone. I'm really excited to share with you this idea of the VSM Collaboration Canvas. And also as a little spoiler up front, maybe you can see this also here on the lower side. You see this CC0. That means everything that I will present today, especially the templates and other artifacts will be shared afterwards as a public domain license. So everything will be available for everyone. Besides the presentation, I have not yet put it online. I will do this later, but yeah, already for you as a spoiler, of course, I will share everything as public domain license. So the VSM Collaboration Canvas, what is it all about? Let's start maybe with some fundamental ideas. I mean, obviously, it's about improving collaboration, but this is really an open approach. So it could be, yeah, that two teams in the same company, yeah, maybe have a problem, or maybe in different companies. So it really does not matter where these two entities, and I'm already addressing this. It's in the moment focused on two entities that somehow want to improve their collaboration. They could be located anywhere in the same organization or in different organizations. And I mean, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on the typical problem statements, because I assume we all know it too well. All the typical problems that we encounter when collaboration is not working well. So that's clear. This canvas, it's actually more than just a canvas. There's also a certain protocol and a methodology behind, or at least an idea on how to do this. And it's a co-creative approach, which means that when I'm working as a VSM facilitator and VSM coach, it's not my ambition that I find the solution, but I trust in the people in the room and the knowledge in the room that they are able to find their own solution. And of course, at the end, super important, it's nice to have insights, but it's much better to derive really than concrete tasks and work on improving than what you have discovered. Also, just to be clear, maybe this is a very personal thing from my perspective, but sometimes, at least in the German sphere, I perceive people who call themselves agile coaches, and sometimes they behave almost like a doctor, as if they are able to run a real professional therapy. And for this purpose, when you have really serious interpersonal problems, this approach is, of course, not applicable. I just want to say it to be very clear about it. So I would assume it's better if there are problems on a rational side than if we have really interpersonal problems. And the use cases, maybe just to make it a little bit more tangible, what is it all about? Yeah, One classical problem that at least I often encounter in my working reality is that on the one hand, you have already teams who are working in an agile approach, so self-management approach, and then you have the traditional maybe ways of managing a team, rather top-down oriented, and then you have the typical clashes and conflicts, not only in terms of culture and mindset that comes very obviously and easily to mind, but also really on a operational level. Yeah, how do you coordinate actually workflows and topics like that when the way of working is really fundamentally different? The same applies then also when two entities decide we want to work together and create something innovative, an innovation partnership. Then also this could be hopefully very helpful. The same applies when you start a new project and maybe there's one entity in the role of being the supplier, another entity is in the role of being the customer, and there also it could be helpful to clarify now in detail how can we manage and really run this relationship in a good way. The same is then, for instance, now when you have the typical corporate bought a startup, the young wild people, and then on the other hand, a corporate, very process oriented. And also here the question, how can we actually improve the collaboration? Joint ventures or alliances is another example. Also interesting, maybe a little bit nerdy, but sometimes even if you have agile teams who are working in an agile way, there are still differences maybe across certain frameworks. And there is then often the question, how do we actually then synchronize our way of working beyond the typical obvious operational topics? Obviously, also here, the VSM could be very powerful. Or you are completely in the green field and you want to create a new operating model for two entities. Open source initiatives is maybe a next possible field for the application or use case. And then most obviously, when you have really conflicts between teams, then it could be very helpful, which is then maybe the difference. While here the aforementioned topics are rather greenfield approaches. Of course, we are sometimes also working in the brown field. We have an existing organization and we want to resolve then problems or conflicts. Now, how is it working? And there are three phases. And phase one, even maybe this sounds like an insult to your intelligence and intellect. Still, it's an important pledge also to myself, also grabbing my own nose. Really, please understand the context. So what is the reason why actually you want to use now this canvas? Usually people have an idea already in the beginning, at least they can talk about the symptoms of the problem. That I mentioned before. We are not well synchronized in our deliverables. We have often misunderstandings about responsibilities and so on. And just the other day, it happened also to me that I too fast stepped into the solution mode before really understanding the problem space. That's why I'm mentioning this. Then secondly, to get most out of this approach, it makes sense that these two entities that will go through this process run a VSM self-diagnosis upfront. How you design it depends, of course, on the concrete situation. Ideally, they don't do this by themselves, but they have someone at their side with VSM knowledge and expertise who can help them to understand them, understand the team, the system and focus, and already maybe also find there already ideas on how to improve the system as such. And when these two teams are prepared, they have more or less an understanding through the lens of the VSM, how are they actually working, how are they actually steering their business, then it makes sense to come together and run then through this VSM collaboration workshop. And this is also where I start now. So I assume that point 1 and 2 or phases 1 and 2 have already been done so that you can then jump into step 3 and use it. And the canvas, how does it work? Before I start, one little disclaimer. Me personally believe, and let me please use here the laser pointer, that for every system, so for system 1, for system 2, and so on, for the diagnostic phase, you should always check what kind of meetings or decision-making structures do we have in place, yeah, to bring one of our systems through the lens of the VSM to life. The same applies also to goals and metrics, processes and workflows, and so on. You can read it by yourself faster than I read it for you. The point is that not necessarily for every system you have to have always one of these mentioned aspects in place, but this is my personal heuristic. In my personal scanning mode, I always double check, do I find here artifacts? Are they existing at all? Or do they exist, but they are dysfunctional? Yeah, they are not really delivering the desired results. So I know besides here these in total 6 systems, when I count also 3-star as a system of its own, we have now these 8 aspects. And I'm sorry to say, but I have to make things worse. I think it's also important to distinguish whether an element is brought to life in a formal way. Is it formally organized, even maybe regulated through corporate governance or something like that? Or is it a rather formal aspect? And like Stafford also said, we should not over-organize. We should always leave some room for informality, for surprise, because otherwise actually we would contradict the idea that we want to create a living system. Because then otherwise, if everything is formalized, obviously we're dealing maybe with a machine, but not with an organism. And that's why I'm pitching also for this. So also ask yourself, maybe where are the informal events where people coordinate and bring system 2 to life? My favorite example is actually when people go together to the canteen, and during the lunch are still talking about the job, and actually they're in the middle of a self-coordination activity. It's not a formal meeting, but maybe they even decide on something, even though they are sitting in the canteen and not in a classical conference room. And that, of course, had its pros and cons. I just want to make clear, keep this in mind, and don't look only on the formal side, but keep also the informal side of the organization in mind. And this applies not only for the self-diagnostic phase, step 2 or phase 2 that I mentioned before, but of course also for the actual activity when you create your collaboration canvas together. So, and then the first step is assuming that the teams have prepared themselves, they have already a written documentation of their self-diagnostic that they have gone through. We start with understanding what is actually happening in your environment and what is happening in the other environment. And then the good old activity of, do we find maybe commonalities? Do we share maybe the same regulatory forces that have an influence on how we run our business, which could then, of course, impact the collaboration, or topics like suppliers, customers, and you know it by yourself, everything else that is relevant. And the idea is literally bring it on a huge wall, ideally a wall where you can work and paint on with a pen. And then with sticky notes here, just symbolically integrated with this XYZ, really make it explicit, visualize it. This is anyhow something. This is not specific to the VSM, but as default pledge also from my side, make things visible, but because what you see, then it's much easier to talk about it. And when you can talk about it, then hopefully you can also solve it. In German, I would call it sichtbar machen, besprechbar machen, lösbar machen. And sorry, this is a little shout out to the German peers here in the round. Yeah, and coming really also from this outside in view, understanding the different environments of the systems, then we can actually step into the operational topic and start to ask the question, now, what are you actually doing and delivering to your customers what are the objects to the, in quotes, outside world. And you do this again for at first the one system and then the other system. You can think about a alternating mode in this context, or do it X starts, then Y continues, and then for the next step, Y starts and X continues. Yeah, you can choose whatever pattern you like. For me, this is not really important. The point is then for the system one that you explore, ask the question, what do I need actually from you? And of course, this is also important the other way around. And here I'm talking about not only classical deliverables. So in terms of artifacts, I need a report from you, for instance, or I need, I don't know, a real object, something physical that will be delivered, but also try to describe the quality, the qualia. So not only the thing as such, but what are the criteria of this object, of this relationship that you need to be successful. Or the other way around, you could even ask the question, always from my side to the other side, what do you need so that I can make you successful? What a crazy thought, especially in huge corporates, I can tell you. Yeah, and again, you go through this clarification and then take notes about the quality, what you actually need, and write it down. And when you then have understood actually what are the activities of the system once in the outside world and also here in this relationship, then you could move forward and ask the question, so, and now help me to understand how are you in the moment for your own system doing your system 2 activities? So how do you ensure a smooth coordination for your own system once? And then afterwards ask the question, and how could we now, between our two systems that we have in focus here, ensure a smooth cross-system coordination? And again, this is a discovery process. You put here the stickies on the side and start to reflect, okay, so you are doing your self-coordination with a weekly event, a typical jour fixe, once per week. I don't know, classic would be in Germany at least the Monday morning. All right, you do this, and you are doing your self-coordination 2 times per week. Interesting. We have already a different frequency. Let's have a look into the topics. And by this exchange, I'm, in my experience, very confident that usually just by this exchange, new ideas will automatically emerge. I mean, I'm assuming that people are in the room who are not totally grumpy and that you don't have a hostile atmosphere. Of course, then this could be really a problematic exercise. Like I said in the beginning, if you have severe interpersonal problems, don't do this, because this is actually based on the assumption that there are people in the room who bring at least goodwill to the table. And that is already, I would say, 50% of what you need to find then a solution. Yeah. So, and then we move forward, as you could expect, after having understood, okay, how is it done per system, and how could we eventually then here harmonize this? Then you step forward to system 3, and for the sake of animation, I also included here 3-star already. You could do this actually in one step, because this is maybe another discussion for another time. Is 3-star really a separate system, or is it part of 3? Anyways, the point is again the same protocol. Tell me, how are you doing actually your operative management, and also the topics regarding 3-star. Again, per system, the same game. And now let's discover, can we somehow align on operational priorities, or how we spend our resources? Of course, focused on enabling then here on the system 1 level, a good exchange, and that the criteria, the quality criteria of the deliverables are clear, and also in the right way prioritize, that the right things are delivered in the right time to the right people. Yeah. And very interesting, this is my default pitch. That's why I'm actually a fan of System 3-star. And I swear to you, when I visit the next Meta Forum in person, I will wear a t-shirt where will be written on, I love 3-star, the most underrated system in my perception, sometimes even forgotten when people talk about the VSM. Because I think here you find really a power on how to incorporate a mutual learning loop. So how could we eventually also conduct together these 3-star activities? And one thing is clear, if we don't take the time to become better, we won't become better. That's why I'm really so passionate about 3-star. I think it's super, super, super important. Of course, the other systems are also important. This is my personal bias. Yeah, and as you know, then we have already covered more or less the operational part of the game. So that we now can ask the question, and how are you now doing your system for stuff in quotes? So how per system, again, do you ensure that you are stay up to date? Again, you use the stickies, you make it visible and tangible. How do you explore the environment? What do you do with the insights that you have integrated? How do you run your strategy process? And most importantly, that's why you find here the stickies on the homostat between 3 and 4. And how do you then really operationalize the strategy? Because I have rarely seen any company that had not enough ideas for strategy, but I have seen many ideas struggling in operationalizing them and really executing the strategy. And then same game again, per system, they do their explanation, how they do it. And then the question, can we somehow align on our long-term development? Strategic roadmaps, can we maybe somehow synchronize it? And ensure then by having a common strategy in place, it will be much easier, of course, to do the stuff on the operational level, to steer it then on a daily basis to finally deliver what is needed. And then, last but not least, I would tackle the topic of system 5 actually in 2 steps. Number 1, I would start with the as-is situation in terms of, can we actually per system say who we are? What is our identity? What is our normative background? Also questions regarding the regulatory frame. And this could be very different. Imagine you have a typical corporate full of ISO standards and I don't know, special regulations according to the industry you're operating in. And then you have this funky young startup and they say, standards? Which standards? We solve every problem in the moment when it occurs. We don't need a standard. Therefore, a very interesting exercise to understand per system, where are they coming from, to build then the foundation to actually create then your meta system. And yes, actually the whole time I know, silently in the background, the people were already building their meta system. But here I would like to make it very, very explicit and ask the question, so how could we, what could tie us together? What are commonalities in terms of goals, objectives? And what I find very useful, by the way, looking virtually towards Martin, twinkle, twinkle in the eye, also starting again with some guiding principles. So what is important for us in our collaboration? For instance, now we don't want to create waste in our organization. We want to present unnecessary work. That could be a principle, or my work that I'm doing in the moment. I'm in Bosch supporting in the manufacturing environment, and there the topic of data is super important. Therefore, now we want to be a data-driven organization, could be then also a guiding principle. Yeah, and by this, then, of course, you could run through the process again and then double check after having defined this. Is it still valid what we have discovered in the previous steps? You could refine it so that then in the end, you have your findings, your ideas on how to improve the collaboration. Yeah, of course, you use also stickies. And then let's operationalize it. Action speaks louder than words. And this is a pretty simple, straightforward approach. You derive the action items. I would do this already, but still when the people are in the round. I would create a cross-team breakout groups. So from both groups, and mix the people, the good old variety engineering, you know it. And of course, time-boxed, because time boxes force people to be very focused and that we don't get into this babble, global, galactic, everything is important stuff. I think that time is a wonderful enabling constraint. Step 2, the groups present their ideas. And of course, you ask for clarification questions. Obviously, this is important so that then you can go into a prioritization mode. I know I make my life now very easy because I assume that in the beginning, it should be enough to focus on the top 3 to 5 measures. So the good old motto of stop starting, start finishing, focus on a few items, work of them, and then you select maybe from a backlog, from a to-do list, from an open point list, and the other topics that you have discovered. And then, I mean, the logic for a prioritization, effort and benefit, or I don't know, you could use this, what is it called? The American president with his matrix, the Eisenhower matrix, for instance, could be also a methodology. For me, this doesn't matter too much as long as it makes sense for the people who are going through this exercise. Step 4, crazy, work on them. And maybe this is now a little bit, I'm mentioning this because, working in a huge corporate like Bosch, it's easy that people are super excited about new ideas and we should and we could. But where are the ones who really say, okay, we need to do this, create a drumbeat, and really be very consistent and focused in doing it? And then last but not least, repeat. And basically introduce a common 3-star activity. And since I've emphasized it already, I have no problem to emphasize again, 3-star is really underrated. And go back and reflect on what have we achieved. Are we on course? Are we happy with the results that we have achieved so far? And then pick on the next items till in a perfect world, there is nothing to do because everything has been clarified and the collaboration is running smoothly and very well. Of course, I mean, humans, organizations, and interactions are like gardens always to me. There's always some weed growing maybe, and sometimes you like the weed in the corner and sometimes it's really annoying and disturbing. And then, of course, you have to bend down and pick it out of the soil, / in this context, of course, maybe new problems will arise, emerge, and then you have to take care about it. What do you get? You get a free download. I will share the link a little bit later here in the chat. You can also find it on my website. I've created not only the canvas as a download, as a PPT that you can edit according to your needs, but also I've created 2 protocols, the one for the self-diagnosis and the one for the collaboration canvas, explaining how it works. And also some facilitation tips are included for the ones who have never done any sort of facilitation before. Final thoughts before we start the discussion. Number 1, of course, we are creating a meta system, but in which meta system are actually organizations when they don't belong to the same organization? Are they in a market? Is it the society, planet Earth? I don't know. I think this could be a very interesting question also then to better understand the nature of the collaboration, to understand in which meta system are we actually active. Then, I have to admit, I did not have really the time to integrate the algedonic system, also sometimes forgotten also from some of us VSM friends. Therefore, it's important to keep it in mind, and I will include it in another iteration, but maybe also later on in the discussion. Maybe one of you has an idea. I'm very happy to pick new ideas and integrate it. Yeah, and the topic of the self-diagnosis, this could be in a real life situation a challenge because, I mean, the effort is relatively high. I think it would not make sense to rush through it because then you have shitty and crappy results and then you go into this mutual session. And I mean, this is actually then the perfect recipe for a disaster. So I would, yeah, always take enough time to do this. Yeah, and the benefit is that even if the collaboration workshop fails, because maybe still the social tension is too high, maybe even the self-diagnosis provides already some benefits for the people who have done it. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's not a real drama. If you don't have the time, you could also incorporate a protocol where always the teams separately think about what we're actually doing here and then share the ideas. So you could try to incorporate it in mind. Yeah, stay flexible, or like Bruce Lee said, be like water. Yeah, and oh no, one more thing, one further thought, and then we can really start the discussion. Actually, I integrated this slide yesterday when I prepared myself here for the talk. Could we even scale this? Because two entities, yeah, this is maybe the classic dualistic way of thinking. Yeah, there's A and there's B, and sometimes we forget about C. And how could we actually orchestrate this that we incorporate more systems and focus? Yeah, would it be then a completely different sequence? Would it run through different days, maybe even, or weeks to do this? And I know it's a hype, but I have made so far really cool experiences with Gen AI, especially. Could an AI maybe be helpful to cluster information, prepare information, support the people in this diagnostic phase eventually? How could we even do this independent of the physical space? So in a remote setup, yeah. And basically, I would like to know which other aspects could be maybe integrated to scale it and not only limit it to two entities. Having said that, these were really then the final words. I say thank you for your attention, and I would say now let's discuss. What do you think? What are your questions? What are your thoughts? And let me double check. I think there were already some chat information, chat messages coming in. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark. Really, really interesting proposals. So let's start the conversation. I think that while we check the chat, let's start with people that are raising their hands. So Lothar, I think if you switch off your presentation, then we can see each other and we can interact better. So we have the first.
So you can see, you can hear me. Thank you.
Yes.
So thanks a lot, Mark. Wonderful. Today I was in contact with a customer of us. We discussed new possibilities of collaboration, let's say. So that would be perfect. But I assume this customer don't has knowledge or experience with a viable system model.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, or do you have even experience how to deal with that? Is that hindering us, or are there things to take into account or that could help to use it anyway?
Good point. I totally forgot to mention it. Thank you. Of course. Yeah, yes. I think it's necessary that they have at least a high-level understanding.
Mm.
For this purpose, I personally would share with them the little examples that I have written recently. So the soccer team example and maybe 2 or 3 other examples that they read up front. And then before starting with the self-diagnostic, give a short introduction. I've seen Martin Pfiffner doing it in 30 minutes. Maybe I need a little bit longer, but
35.
yeah, it's doable. And I think we can take also the nerdiness out of the game by just explain it in a normal way. You know, we have to do things, they need to be coordinated, we need to manage it on an operative level with the resources and the rules, we need to inspect, blah, blah, blah. And my recent record was to explain the VSM in 6 minutes.
Yeah. I thought, and just to get your opinion, of let's say a generic layer without let's say the VSM in the using VSM words, but I mean the questions behind are quite general, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I created also for this purpose, I call it the VSM canvas, so without collaboration. And here I consciously focus really just on the boxes, not all the lines, not all the descriptions, no system 1, 2, 3 language, just operation coordination, to lower the barriers and make it cognitively easier accessible.
We try it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Lothar.
Right. Who else would like to? Judith.
Hi, Mark, you created a monster. I love it. Beautiful. Yeah, I think it's particularly awesome because I use the viable system model a lot for diagnosis, and I always get lost in the recursion levels. As in our organization, we have a complex matrix. So that means that the upper management always interferes and mingles with your strategy and with your operational management and so on. And what you can do actually is you use the approach you have developed in order to also discuss different recursion level systems, you know, so not just the nesting, you know, that you can never visualize. And how Stafford Beer visualized it with his cybernetics drawings, it's somehow not, you cannot use it, but I can use your approach in order to like pull the nesting somehow pull the two systems, 3 that are somehow interconnected apart from another, and then analyze it with your approach. I think that's really super helpful. Yeah, it was really an eye opener. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I haven't. Thank you. This is an idea that I didn't have in mind when I was creating. I just was of this. Just mirror it, Mark, and then you have a space between, and there you can use the space for.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if they are on the same level or if it's a different recursion level.
Exactly.
You know, you can still use it.
Doesn't matter.
Perfect.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. The only thing is where I would insist on, at least when you are the coach, be clear what is my system in focus and have at least in your background the recursion level in mind, because that can impact then, of course, the discussion. Yeah, thank you, Judith. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judith. We have Annabelle now.
Oh, hello. Hi, everyone. This is my first time at one of these meetings, and I'm just still learning a lot about systems thinking. I'm studying MSc in it at the moment. I work in the National Health Service in England, in London, and what you are describing, it makes a lot of sense in terms of what I'm trying to do in my work, which is bring together people from social care, from the voluntary sector, and from the health service. And I think the way that you go through, the way that this model helps you to go through the different layers really unpicks it, because at the moment we just throw people together and it's the individuals on the ground that are having to hold all of that complexity, and we haven't thought it through. But I wanted to ask, in the workshops that you describe, what level of sort of person do you have? It's very hierarchical in our organizations. If you say operation, there's an operational lead, or there's a clinician or a frontline person, and number 4, number 5, that's someone else in another office somewhere else. They don't really interact. I think that's one of the major problems. But I wonder, when you plan a workshop like this, do you think you should have everybody there? Or if it is an organization that is like that?
Yeah, I would always strive for finding a good mix of people, indeed. Yeah, the topic of swarm intelligence, in quotes, but that, of course, means that you have people in the room where it's normal that a rather frontline person is talking with an executive, and if you don't have the respective culture, then it could be, of course, a real challenge. But the danger is if you have only the operational people in hand, maybe they forget about certain meta system topics in their meta system. Vice versa, when you have only the executives in the room, they have no clue about the operational reality. That's also is not really helpful. So I believe in this mix. But the prerequisite is, of course, that you have a culture where people feel free to talk, psychological safety, etc., pp, to enable then, of course, also a fruitful discussion. Ashby's law, a variety. We need the right variety of people. Not too high variety, because then it's unmanageable. And when we are all of the same, this is also then not properly providing the insights that we need. It's a balance.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Annabella. Very interesting question. John Lee. You are muted, John. You are muted.
I thought you did a fabulous job, and my first point is we're all conversant on VSM, I think, including the previous speaker. And the point that you're making is that you're at different levels and you're acting like you're at the same level. The problem is people that are in System 5 are trying to tell System 1 people what to do, and the System 1 people are actually doing it. They're not in theory. And the people in System 5 have a whole different relationship. So the point is to use the VSM language to clarify. Now, if you're in the next level in the recursion, then level 5 is level 1. So you can actually see what it is. But as is described with the National Health Service, you may have 5 or 6 layers. And so people that are in London and people that are in Birmingham are not talking about the same problem, even if they're talking at the same level, because London is so much more complicated than Birmingham is. The main point I want to make, though, is at the end of your talk, which I love, I think that you answered your own question, which is, number one, we're now at the level where in this room, everybody is VSM conversant. So if you say 3-star, we all have a different idea about what it is, which is your argument. We have undervalued 3-star at the expense of understanding how to utilize it. And so I'm interested in finding out what you actually mean and what you mean by 3-star. Because for me, 3-star is the one that's most exclusively focused on the system and focus that it's part of. And so to go to another system, it would be like going to another solar system and then trying to talk about our sun. Anyway, the main point I want to make is that I came out of County Mental Health Administration before I discovered Stafford Beer 50 years ago. So for me, my job was to get the psychiatrists to do what they said they were going to do. So from my standpoint, the advantage of VSM is it creates a platform for doing psychotherapy within the organization. So you say, this is what I think System 3 is, and the other person goes, no, that's System 5. And you go, oh, we've got a 3, 4, 5 problem. And then you start to talk about it within the language of VSM, and you get to the point, and this is my version of what you just did. You start like this, then you go like this, then you go like this, then you go like this. And at that point, you're communicating. And so if somebody's a clinician in Birmingham, they can talk to somebody on the phone in NHS in London and say, wait a minute, you're not seeing it the way I am, and then re-describe it so it makes sense to the person until they get clarity. This is all about the psychotherapy of the organization. And to me, the brain of the firm is what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. I have a question. More a comment than a question. You make me think in a work that we did with John Walker, with my husband many years ago, that was using the VSM to reflect about the way that a collaborative network of cleaner production in businesses happened in Mexico. It was a network of 100 business, and a friend of us, a Dutch engineer, was leading this project for about 10 years, and it was a fascinating, very effective project. And what we did was to reflect on the way that they built this collaboration network between these 100 businesses and in terms of sharing, developing cleaner production processes and sharing experience and learning about cleaner production. And the VSM helped us to understood many of the aspects of collaboration and qualified so that the next time that a similar project was made now in Colombia, the design of the network was more robust.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking that your approach would be fantastic in the context of designing a collaborative network, because in particular, because the way that you do it is that you develop a bottom-up approach in which people start identifying issues for collaboration together collectively, and then when they design the meta system, then the meta system is already bottom up made. So there's been a lot of agreements in the process. So it will be a more robust meta system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that your approach has enormous amount of possibilities of being used in that context. And then what I think that will be very useful is to explicitly identify the potential issues for collaboration as the ones like the attractors of the whole process of designing the meta system.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many, many networks that are being created that are intentionally collaborative networks, little ecosystems of businesses that are created for a particular purpose. So if you have that clear and you have your methodology, you can really help to speed up the process of creating a collaborative network. And even if it's a temporal meta system, because many of these networks are temporal, it may be that the temporality is a 5 years, a 10 years. So worth enough to make the efforts of designing the meta system.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maybe one thing I was debating myself, and I'm remembering an exchange with Jose. Where do I start with the VSM? No? There is the school of we start with system 1 and then we go upwards. And Jose, I know, and I'm also doing this sometimes. I start or try to understand the system by looking at system 5, what's the identity, and then going from 5 to 1. That could be also maybe then in this context, that's why you triggered this thought, could be also interesting maybe to start with a purpose. However, in my experience, when you start with system 5, there's the danger that you get into this global galactic discussions. And system 1 is so concrete, is what do I need from you?
Yeah.
What do you deliver to me? What do I deliver to you? What is our relationship? This loop. That's why I'm a fan of that. Yeah.
But I didn't mean that to start with system 5. On the contrary, what I love from your approach is that you start with system 1 and you discover the issues, the natural issues for collaboration. The only thing that I'm saying is more about the identity in terms of what is the shared identity, what is the natural process of collaboration that you are trying to build up between a group of people, because if that's clear, that's the focus for the analysis. And then what you do is to design the organization that is more appropriate, the network, the collaborative network that is more appropriate for this shared identity. That's what I'm saying. Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, Jonathan.
Oh, right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Mark, I love to talk. I loved also that you have a bottom-up approach, not a top-down to start with. And I like that you like 3-star because it is the system for self-awareness, which I think is the only way that you can make change, which is why it's so important. Have you thought about how you make the system seamless? So the problem is the bottom-up approach stops when you start to have in my experience, when you start to have a workshop, and it's the stop the world, we need to sort it out approach, which for practical reasons is all that many people can do. But if you can make the system so it's part of everyday life, everyday working, that you're asking these questions, then you don't need to keep trying to stop. It becomes part of how you do it. How would you do that?
Of course, Jonathan, you have the tough question. Boah.
Okay, well, I'll give you an answer. I have a computer app which fits in very closely with your system,
Okay.
which you can put on everybody's computer. And
Okay.
you do your normal working day, but you're asking these questions and building that very canvas that you have. I'm very happy. I think if we combine the two, it might be quite interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Then we should have a follow-up on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan. Team.
Well, first of all, I think I'm going to sell T-shirts after this, because they might sell well, and I'm a fan of 3-star as well. I have two questions, I think, and one is already started to be addressed about the top down and the bottom up. I'm not sure whether it makes sense to, when you compare, to start from the outside or from system one. My thought was, are we not building a joint new system? Are we not building, as two organizations, a new VSM construction where we're trying to create a common environment and then a way to create the value that we're trying to extract from that partnership that we're building? So understanding the self-diagnosis for both sides helps us to understand the design constraints on the new system we're building up to become the living system of the collaboration. Because I think it's useful to understand the two. But I worked for GE for 20 years, right? And it's very, 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 very unlikely that when we acquire a startup, the startup is going to change the way a 350,000 people behemoth is acting, right? But if we understand the particularities of the two sides, and then we create a common system, a new system that lives that collaborationship, that would be interesting. So I was wondering, does it really make sense in the work together to start from the bottom? Or do we really, when we have good understanding of ourselves, we look at the motives and the measurements and what are we getting out? So rather starting on somewhere in between 3 and 4 rather than on 5, because I agree that gets us into galactic discussions, but I don't really care how people are operationalizing it on their side, as long as the collaboration itself works.
Interesting point, Tim. Yeah, because I mean, when you do in the beginning your initial, you gain the understanding. In German, we call it Auftragsklärung. I have no clue how to say this in English. When we clarify, the job of the facilitator, and then maybe just by listening, you get an indication. For instance, just picking up on your idea. Oh, they have really an operational issue. It's about resource management. Sounds to me like system 3. Maybe we can start by system 3 and then walk through the surrounding systems in quotes. Is it rather than normative problems? I would move to strategic or normative stuff to 4 and 5. Is it rather than operational stuff to 2 and 1? And of course, 3-star. So that could be also an approach. However, I'm a little bit hesitant because, I mean, for people, it's already hard to understand the VSM. And when you don't have an inherent logic, and this is the beauty for me of this 1, 2, and so on, maybe they could get lost. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much. I think it's definitely valid and interesting. I have to ask VSM GPT what it thinks about it. Jokes aside, I would like to also comment on what you said. Yes, of course. If a huge corporate like GE is buying a startup, of course, GE will not adapt and change its own ways of working. But at least maybe you can make the friction better visible, and maybe through a rationalization process, which this is actually more or less, eventually it's possible to better manage the interface. So that at least here, where you have the exchange, at the boundary, at the border between the two systems, you have less friction, less frustration, less waste, less bullshit. And still, the huge corporate will stay what it is. But who knows, maybe at the border, at the membrane of the cell, in quotes, maybe there at least you can optimize or improve the flow of energy, material, information, whatever. Yeah. And yeah, at least also this is one thing, start to understand why the other person is acting in the way it is acting, and start to understand myself through the lens of the other person. Maybe this is a little bit too cheesy from my side, but yeah.
No, I think self-awareness is the biggest problem in organizations. Well, also in most humans, but that's a different problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I have to think about this. Maybe start in the middle. Also an interesting idea. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay. Oh, Margaret, lower your hand. Did you give up? All right. Martin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, Mark. I love it very much. Collaboration Canvas, I think quite interesting, quite helpful. I can really imagine, and that's the big advantage you have. I'm sure you have tested this also on the ground already, and it must have been working well. So nice tool, really. For the discussion, I think we should distinguish between the purpose of a collaboration canvas to just build a meta system for cooperation of anything that needs to cooperate between organizations, between levels of recursion, and the question of who steams who in terms of steering, the definition of self-steering, who steers himself to what level, the level of autonomy, the level of coherence. And here in that regard, the levels of recursion matter really, because there we have the hierarchy from the relevance of information, right? Mm-hmm. So one thing is a collaboration canvas to just build a meta system for cooperation, and their levels of recursion don't matter. And the other thing is, if you look at it as a steering system as a whole, and regarding Lothar, that would be my answer. Also, the door opener is to say, let's talk about the steering system, our steering system. How do we steer ourselves, including decision and communication structures, of course. And if you apply it really as a steering system as a whole, then the levels of recursion matter in the end, because the strategy, planning, and so on need to be in a certain logic, right?
Yeah.
But congratulations, like it very much.
Thank you. But Martin, also to Judith, maybe one comment because of this recursion topic. Indeed, we have to be careful that if we have really neighboring recursion levels, then of course the operative unit, system one, is maybe the one side of this duality that I'm looking at. And then maybe I would completely cross out the operational topics and solely focus on the steering part. Yeah, not to get confused on this part, really focus on the exchange of delivery of, I don't know, whatever artifacts that were a need for our strategic, operative, and so on steering. I think you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think you are right. You can completely get mixed up, but maybe I could use it for zooming in, that, okay, let's talk about how the system 4 of the upper management interferes with your own strategic steering. Yeah. And that's just it. I mean, nothing more than this. Just zoom in this level of your canvas, and not try to find the world formula to describe everything. Yeah. So just zooming in could be helpful. Mm.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yes.
John. And thank you, Martin. Thank you.
Yeah, Mark, I loved it as well. I mean, this is just my sort of thing, people working together and non-hierarchical and collaboration and collaboration clearly seems to be the one thing that humanity needs at the moment as much as anything else. I mean, people working together instead of this crazy neoliberal competitive stuff that we're in. The thing that was going through my mind when you were doing this is that I guess you must have started, if you're trying to get two organizations to collaborate, the obvious thing from a VSM point of view is to say, okay, we'll call each of these systems one, and we'll build a classic VSM meta system above that to do the collaboration, to do to bring it all together. In which case you would have you'd probably have a very similar system 3, and Stafford goes into a great deal in Heart of Enterprise how the best system 3s are representatives of the system 1s coming together to work together to do exactly the sort of thing you were talking about. But if these two entities that are collaborating, if the intention is for them to emerge in a new wholeness, then you'd have a different system 4, which would have the potential of looking at a larger environment rather than just the sum of the two collaborative ones.
Oh, yeah.
So I just wondered if you'd been through that exercise of doing a classic, let's just design a meta system to get these two system 1s to work together for their mutual benefit, rather than the way you approached it, which was a lot, which I like a lot more because it fits with my my approach to life. But I just wondered if you'd been through the more classic approach to using the VSM to do that.
No, not yet, I have to admit, and not in this regard or in this context. Interesting question, eh? Yeah. I like the idea, definitely, to say system, the sum of the two system 4s and their understanding of the future and the environment is more than just it's more than the sum. It's something different. That would be actually beautiful if that would happen, because then there's obviously also an inside process happening, somehow amplifying what has happened instead of just combining the two of them. But I have to admit, I mean, to be honest, I did this only once, really, I have to say, in this full beauty. However, of course, I mean, the VSM is in my spine. It's part of my reflexes. And I have always the VSM in my mind, even if I'm not doing this explicitly. Because that's also, maybe just as a side note, using the VSM in general, sometimes I really have to be careful and decide, do I want to be the cook who is running into the restaurant and showing everyone, look, these are the pans and the pots that I'm cooking this nice dish for you? Because the people are coming actually in the first place in the restaurant just to enjoy a nice evening and have a nice dinner. So that's why I'm sometimes, even though I love the VSM and maybe I will still get a VSM tattoo, I'm still debating this with myself. No joke. I try to be very careful and consider where does it make sense, to expose people to it. And that's why I have not moved so far, like you said, described.
Okay, well, we must develop it because it's a fascinating approach.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you again. Food for thought. Wonderful.
Thank you, John and Mark. Jose.
Well, hello, Mark. Congratulations for this, the work that you are doing. I think that is very important, that people like you are trying to make relatively easy the application of the VSM, because there is a lot of theory, etc. But what is missing is a concrete guide to help managers in an easy way, if we can say that. No? So congratulations for the work that you are doing. That I think that is fantastic, Mark. So, but this is the first thing. The other thing I would like to say is, who do you love more, your mother or your father? There is no answer. There is no answer to that. No, you love the two. No, so what do you prefer, bottom up or top down? Oh my God, no! I need bells. So when you are starting to facilitate the communication at that level of the operational units, the system ones that you put in the example, they have to have in mind, why are they there? What is their purpose? And recursively, they have to go up to whatever is necessary, following all the recursion levels. So all the recursion levels are coherent. So I see it fantastic, your approach to clarify at a specific concrete level what is necessary to make it operative, etc. But also closing the loop, going to the system 5 and coming back, system 5, so going up and down, up and down, up and down continuously.
Yeah.
Continuously.
Yeah.
And not only
Yeah.
to the previous, the other that was in the recursion level -1, that I try to, no, all recursion levels. You have to continually check the coherence of system 5s at all levels, system 4s at all levels, system 3 at all levels, system, etc. at all levels. And this is in a continuous way of operating from time to time to tell the group that you are handling at that specific level, telling, okay, but from time to time, let's remember, why are we here for? And you go up. So I think that they are complementary. Is fantastic. In fact, what you are doing is, I'm an engineer, so I love the details, to do the things, not thinking the philosophy, why are we here, where are we coming from, where are we going in the life. No, this is good, but also it's good to make it operative. This is why it's so important what you do, but having in mind always the system 5. And the other thing is, that I'd like to ask you, I think you answered already. I was going to ask you if you have an example, because you talked about the time necessary to explain the VSM. You mentioned 1 day, and also you mentioned the record time of 6 minutes. I think that you said, which is a good time to transmit it. It's really a record. I would like to see if you have an example, if you have it, if you can share it, of a real case and how did it go, the application? What was the timing? How many people was involved, more or less? And how did you use this approach that you are sharing? If that can be done.
I can give you some cornerstone content, not all the details. So per team, 6 people, so that 12 people were in the room, manageable, nice group size. In the first place. It's in the IT environment where I am dealing with engineers. And my experience is that engineers are generally speaking pretty open to models and abstract thinking. And they are easy to connect with the VSM. Completely different story when you are working with people in the fashion field. I once tried it. Funny. They were totally lost. So then I'm working with technical people. And the problem was, inconsistencies in the delivery and not really a clarification of the dependencies. And I wanted to sort out more than just the typical operational dependencies. I need this from a technical point of view because that's a prerequisite that in the next step I can produce something, blah, blah, blah. Because also the roadmaps, system 4, the whole planning process should be rather aligned. And they were working in different agile modes. Same, but different. And that was the problem, the different. And there I wanted to use this approach to really make it tangible and very explicit. And it was not really actually rocket science and adaptations in synchronizing work rhythms. When do we look on our backlogs? When do we review together certain results and not just someone is throwing something over the fence and then go with it and be happy. I did my job. I fulfilled the specification. No, you have to do it together. That was the thing. And therefore, the individual analysis was also not so wild because when you work in an agile way of working, you're running actually more or less a viable system. The question is it functional or dysfunctional? Of course, that's another topic. But it was not hard to assess it. And then also bringing them together was not so hard because they were also not a hostile atmosphere. They were just like, why do we have always these misunderstandings? It's so annoying. You are so nice, but still somehow we have this friction. And then it was, rather simple stuff to tackle, not so hard. So small group size, engineers, ways of working. That was the context.
Thanks very much, Mark.
And one point, Jose, because this always looping through system 5 is super sexy idea. I really like it. And by the way, when I do, sorry, this is now a little bit off topic, just for a minute maximum. I'm inspired by also your approach with this top-down stuff. Now, whom do you like more? Actually, I asked in the beginning always the question about system 5 and 4. Then I jump to system 1. And from there, I work then to the middle part, in quotes, of the model. So personally, I always start also with 5. Yeah, who are you? Who do you want to be? But not in a global galactic way. Give me a short purpose statement. Why do you exist? In one sentence. And when people cannot answer this question, then it's already for me a red flag. Yeah. Then I know.
I think that is one of the more difficult questions to answer, by the way.
Yeah. And the thing is then always from a facilitator point of view, again, like I said, that we don't deviate in totally philosophical discussions, but stay in our system and focus. And since I'm working only in business, private sector, what is now the business? What kind of value do you want to deliver to your customers? What is your value proposition? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So, yes.
Well, Mark, thanks very much and congratulations again for your work.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Jose and Mark. Margaret.
I really like what you're trying to do. I've always been completely obsessed with collaboration processes and what happens in groups. And I want to just make some observations from sort of my social psychology. Not that I did social psychology, but I was in a department that dealt with that stuff. And what I've always felt is that the way that you go from environment to system 1 dynamic is very, very useful, because first of all, you're allowing people to make that, I'm just going to go E1 to S5 link. You're allowing them to communicate their context, their sense of self, their situation in terms of 4E cognitive science, their embodiment, their, everything, their extensive cognition, everything that is about, makes up how they consider themselves embodied in a particular environment. What life's like for us, it's what we do, what we're about. This is all embedded identity statements. I really like the way that these process dynamics that you kickstart in the group allow them to also, hopefully you'll talk a bit about this, your channels, to start identifying sort of various channels, flows of, because that always drives me nuts when people just miss out channels all the time. They're the most important thing. It's how everything hangs together. You're starting a kind of autocatalytic process with building on the ideas. You're developing an autopoietic framework with which they can actually build this collaborative structure. And I think this is kind of part of the developmental dynamics of a VSM, how it grows. And we often forget about that organic growth part. You don't automatically have a VSM, you have to create it, in a sense, if you're in a collaborative environment. So that's really, really exciting for me. I love the focus on the synchronies and the temporal dynamics, because we know that people who are together and share a language and start to share a language and start communicating with each other, literally your brain waves start synchronizing. And this makes communication and understanding between you much, much easier. So I'm all for this bottom-up stuff with the E1 to S5. I know this is an unusual link, people. And yes, I used to do 3-star consulting work, so I'm really a 3-star person too. But this looping of the process dynamics that you're talking about in this canvas is absolutely essential. And I think people often underplay that, unfortunately. So well done for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Margaret.
Judith?
Yeah, I just thought, Mark, about the algedonic signal or system. Probably you could involve it in step 6, where you talk about guiding principles, goals, objectives, and what could tie us together. Probably you could also talk about early warning systems, or how do we notice when things get off track, and how do we inform one another or our entire system about when we feel it's getting off track again, so that could be step 6, probably. Yeah,
because especially, very interesting idea. I mean, sometimes you have the situation, you're standing in front of let's say a red house, and everybody's saying, no, the house is green, but you see it, but it's not allowed to say, no. That's why the system 5 is maybe a perfect point to ask the question, and how do we now ensure that we have the algedonic system in a functional way installed. Yeah. This is zack, neue Idee, super. Thank you. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, makes sense.
John.
I just want to add the word eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is the measure of the algedonic sense in terms of providing the context of the meta language of talking about what it is that System 5 and how it integrates to System 1. You folks, I've got goosebumps because you folks understand what I just said. Okay, the point is that we need to teach the language so that people can use it within the organization so they can improve. That is Martin, I love your talk. I went through your Metaforum talk and took notes and did the best I could to learn as much as I could. I feel the same about Mark's talk today. This is an exquisite example of how VSM works. Anybody that's read the graphic could understand your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, you could just have the graphic there and take a look at it and then listen to your talk, and it would be more than 6 minutes, but at the end of your 35 minutes, it would be a very good understanding of how the pieces fit together in an alive way, how you become viable, how you become sustainable. That's what the country and the world needs to talk about. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you, John. Yeah.
Thank you. Martin, you want to go before?
No, I was just applauding. But I'm a computer illiterate. Maybe it was the wrong sign.
All right, okay. Just a final comment, Mark. I think that there is another extra value of your approach, and is that when you try to design and implement a collaborative network, one of the most important aspects is what are the essence of collaboration? How do you create some collective consciousness about who are the other person I'm collaborating with? And I think that the VSM has this magic, this beauty, that when you draw the system and you go through the in a very structured way to the process of reflecting on the shared environments, on the approach to different kind of processes, on the different aspects that you do when you do the system 1 to 5. Yeah, that creates like a mental model, a collective mental model that will allow, will be a way to go through the process of developing collaboration in a way that is very unique, is very different from everybody talks about collaboration and networks, but the way to address it is normally like someone is saying, asking the right questions, and people have to respond to certain specific questions, but this more organic process of sort of understanding who is the other, in a bottom up is very powerful. So I'm very excited about your approach. I think that could have a very, 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 very interesting applications, not only in the private sector that you are doing, but also in the public sector, like the example that Annabella was saying in the national health sector. Perfect. I mean, you have to do these integrated care systems in which you have all sorts of different agents, and if you have a way to really be aware of the different aspects of the of contributions that each one is doing in a very structured way, you can build up stronger networks. So thank you very much.
Yeah, just one thought, because yesterday in Germany we had a little disaster. No? For the first time, the Chancellor of Germany was not elected in the first voting round, but in the second voting round. And maybe it would have helped the parties and doing their coalition talks to use this approach to prevent this disaster. And probably off topic, but anyways, just came to my mind.
Okay, Tim. You are
mute.
Last question from my side, because there's a lot of practitioners, and I don't disagree with what I'm hearing, but I have a very different experience from most of the organizations I encounter, is that the lack of self-awareness as an organization is at a very, very different level. I mean, I've been working with organizations that, Mark, you said, spend a day on do a analysis of how their VSM is configured. And I think I'm not too bad working with the tool. But I've spent 6 months with an organization and they haven't figured out how the fuck, pardon my French, they're taking decisions, right? They don't even know what the decisions are that they are taking. They just happen. And this is an industrial company and not a small company. So I would be very interested. And I see Martin and Jose smiling a little bit, what your experience is with that, because that's the starting point. And for most of the organizations I'm seeing, and we're usually getting involved with organizations in some form of crisis or turmoil, they really don't have the time to reflect, because it's counterintuitive to what they're experiencing. They have so much pressure on fixing the problem that they don't understand that they actually need to slow down rather than speeding up.
Yeah. And yeah, of course, no? I was doing this and testing this with smaller teams, software development teams. Yeah, in the best sense, with the highest respect, cool nerds. When you are in a huge corporate, I don't know, X 100,000 people organization, global, then a one-day assessment is maybe too much. But I have seen Martin doing the magic, no, not directly, in a plant of us, a huge plant, important plant of Bosch. In one day, it's possible to bring a diverse group together, let them explain. And he was, I don't know, you needed 45 minutes, 1 hour maximum to explain the VSM, and they run through the diagnostic by themselves just by reflecting on the purpose of the system, not so much the channels, Margaret, looking to your direction. And thank you for this comment. Indeed, I have to admit, I'm also sometimes too boxy and not taking about the channels. Shame on me. So there is a correlation between the size of the organization and the ability to conduct it in a short amount of time.
And I'm not.
You need a small fractal of the organization.
And I'm not necessarily talking about somebody understanding it or extracting that. If I speak to an organization, I can usually figure it out within a day. But can they understand it? Can they see it? And can they work with it? So Martin must be at a whole different level than myself. You wrote an entire book about it. But like, if you want to work with it, it's not about me understanding it. I'm never the bottleneck on my projects, right? And this is interesting as an organizational developer. How do you get that point across? Because people are like, oh yeah, we got to move this forward and we got to move faster. And it's like, yeah, it's not me usually, right? It's you telling me something and then not seeing it. We had this after 6 weeks, we told them, and after 6 months, they came back and they told us, oh, we know what the problem is. And we told them, yeah, but here is an email that's 4.5 months old, and here is the mural board for the workout or the workshop we had after 8 weeks. And they were flabbergasted after spending a day working on this, totally forgetting about it. And when we wound them back 6 months later, they were like, oh, yeah, we did it and we followed the instructions and we wrote it all down, but we have no understanding how we could not see it at the time. So that would be interesting for me.
Yeah. I have no perfect answer to that, to be honest. Besides, maybe sometimes as a facilitator, as a coach, as a consultant, you have to wait till the pain level is high enough.
Yeah.
When they're so desperate, then they maybe slowly start to listen to you and accept all these paradoxes. Just like you said, in order to become faster, you need to slow down. In order to get stuff done, don't do everything. Focusing, work in progress, VIP limit, and stuff like that.
Well, I feel like working with the coyote and the roadrunner, and usually the people they have crossed the chasm a long time ago, and then they call us when they're above the ground, and it's like, do you get them back or do you just slow the fall? But I would love to hear from Martin, because I think he's got a question or an insight to share.
Yeah, just want to jump in quickly. I absolutely agree that there's a lack of language to talk about what matters now. What matters now is really who is taking what decisions. How can we take decisions faster and better, given that fog that we're in, that uncertainty, everything is changing all the time, and nevertheless we need to find direction. This is cybernetics at its best, so to speak, right? And I think maybe the most important thing I learned in the last 20 years was how I framed the viable system model, because I started framing it as typical structure and process work. Organization is divided in structure and process, and that's it. And if you do it like that, you have lost from the beginning, because they have everything in these regards. And therefore, talking about the steering system, and that's what people are interested in. Steering is taking decisions and communicating, and saying and telling them, well, there is a solution to that, and it's also a practical solution. It has been tested in practice. I think there's a huge demand for that language, exactly. And the experience is, as soon as they talk with each other in that language, and I think the collaboration canvas helps quite a lot in that regard. As soon as they start talking and thinking about the language, I observe two things. First thing is, it's not that difficult, because everybody is himself organized like that. It's the most natural thing, actually. And the other thing is that they don't give that language up anymore. As soon as they once learned it, they use it. It's really helpful for them. And then even if you can go deeper and deeper and talk about the communication lines, I also agree with Margaret, very important for the viability. But also, if you just start with the tip of the iceberg, you have a lot of insights already. That's my experience. Thank you.
Yeah. And maybe just one sentence, Margaret. I mean, you experienced by yourself, Martin, the power how in Bosch, in certain management levels, they all speak VSM now.
Yeah.
It's it's marvelous. It's working. Yeah. I just want to confirm what you said, Margaret.
Okay, last comment from Margaret.
So so I have a suggestion when folk are in that state, is you could have a look at some of the psychology and the neuroscience research on that, on what is actually required for us to get into a creative state of mind to be able to solve the problems. You can look at the neurobiology of stress systems and how they behave. Sometimes when you take people off topic into the actual biology and functioning of their own bodies and brains, and how to optimize for the type of problem, the type of decisions they're needing to make, the solutions they're trying to find, and you take them through the necessary conditions to actually get into that psychological state, to actually harness your neurobiology. It can often give you the time you need for them to actually soak the info in, and then for the subconscious minds and so on, and the sort of more relaxed environments to actually free up some space and some time, and have the stress system in a different state, so that the mind can actually work on that stuff. Yeah. And I think we keep forgetting the neurobiology of this and the social conditions under which they're most, sometimes in isolation, sometimes in an off-road activity, so to speak. So I think that that's really, really important as part of the process aspects, to be able to get people into the states to deal with different levels in the VSM.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good one. Yeah. And that relates maybe to, I think Annabelle was her name, what she said in the beginning. What kind of people do you need in the room? I mean, if there is fear in the room, forget it. Our brain will not be creative. Yeah. And hierarchy and fear is really a super toxic combination. Forget it. Then I also would not do it, honestly, because this is a total waste of my personal time. And yeah. Before we close the session, I would use the opportunity just to put in the chat the link. I don't know if Google has already found the page. That's why, if you want to download the stuff and so on,
great,
you have it.
Thank you, Mark. We can add that link. Somehow we can share the chat. Whoever wants to a copy of the chat, just email me and I will share with everyone. Okay. Well, thank you. Brilliant, Mark. Absolutely fantastic. Very exciting, very useful, and very deep conversation. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honor and pleasure.
Okay. So see you all very soon in the next webinar in 1 month. There's going to be another practitioner webinars before we will be reminding you of the other one. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.